a frozen land buried in dense subarctic forests. While undergoing geological research in preparation for the development of natural resources, an anomalous object is discovered below the permafrost. The military quickly calls special forces into action, and the entire area is completely sealed off. The mysterious object is then transferred under absolute secrecy to a research facility for further study. A month later, military headquarters receive an investigative report regarding the mysterious object and decides to order one of the men working at the dig on a clandestine mission. That man is Dragunov, a member of an elite special forces team who is feared in battlefronts throughout the world as the White Angel of Death. He acknowledges the mission with a silent nod and leaves for Japan.
Hello everyone. Today, we're going to delve into the enigmatic world of Sergei Dragunov from the iconic video game franchise, Tekken. Despite the limited information and biography provided in-game, I'm pieced together the fragments to explore this character. Despite the lack of lore, this mysterious and tough physically and mentally soldier with an unspoken, quite literally charismatic presence stands out, coupled with his cold and stoic demeanor, sets him apart from the rest of the cast, making him a beloved figure in the Tekken community. But his actions and behaviors tell the story of opposite of his establishment, as silent and empty for any compassion man, as deeply troubled man who's found his humanity dampened by the horrors of his past and present. In this video, I'm going to take you through all the aspects of Sergei that make him such a terrific figure and a harrowing example of what can happen to a man who's dwelled in the dark for too long. So who exactly is Sergei Dragunov? In a shadowed corner of the Russian military, Dragunov emerged as a legend in the world of covert operations. He belonged to an exclusive special forces unit, known only to a select few, and his reputation spread far and wide, earning him the ominous moniker, the White Angel of Death. Sergei has a stern, solemn, sharp and menacing face, one that is rarely seen with a smile or any hint of joy. The multiple scars that line his face and the cold dead eyes that lay buried beneath them are telling tale of a man who's seen and experienced many horrors in his life during or before his service to motherland. His scars aren't only limited to his face. He suffered more than one injury over the course of his lifestyle. A Spetsnaz Russian special operative, adding another layer of torment to an already troubled character. His clothes are mostly, by obvious reasons, standard issue infantry. Also throughout his canonical appearances, he rarely deviates from the regulated military attire, except for one notable exception. In his primary outfit throughout the series, Ensemble features a brown military uniform, adorned with striking white or golden eagle designs on each side, an emblem of power and authority, with a white long-sleeve button shirt underneath and red necktie at the collar, matching brown military pants and black boots with black military gloves. In his specialized outfit designed for special operations, he wears a green combat suit with a grey bulletproof vest, matching green combat pants, all crisscrossed with black straps and black combat boots. This outfit is accessorized with black gun holsters adorn each side of his waist. Completing the ensemble, Dragunov slips his hands into black gloves, each fingertip adorned with a striking red accent to his utilitarian attire. His appearance is very much in line with the man Sergei's, as what we see here is a man who appears to not take jokes and one who has a countenance that relays to us a grave seriousness that comes from the many years he's likely spent living a reality of humanity's worst deeds and wrongdoings, which brings us to his personality. His countenance conveys a deep coldness, likely stemming from reality of years living in situations of constant warfare and life and death scenarios, which, in turn, shapes his personality. We can infer that Sergei's experience as a Russian elite military soldier has greatly influenced his persona. While we may not have information about Sergei's past before his military service, it is evident that he has become a stoic, disillusioned, and uncompassionate individual, primarily focused on accomplishing his mission, regardless of the cost. This is among the rare virtues that can be identified in Sergei Dragunov. However, his admirable, even noble commitment to completing his mission, even at the expense of his own well-being, is underscored by his lack of concern for the welfare of innocent people, families, children. Viewing them solely as living beings on a checklist, Sergei couldn't care less whether the men serving with him are miserable, or if the cost of his actions leads to the demise of innocent lives. What truly matters to him is the successful completion of the mission for sake of motherland, a fact that becomes apparent through his treatment of fellow soldiers, his despise of enemies, whenever they show any sign of weakness, or how he totally, along with his ability to disregard his own feelings in most situations, with only occasional glimpses of his personal background. However, it's equally evident that the death of his comrades deeply affects him. We can assume he is not devoid of basic feelings of sympathy, as he is an individual with interests and exceptional, quite remarkable oratory skills and signing skills. If he chooses to speak, he might feel stressful and sorrowful at what he likely sees as lives lost too soon, deaths that could have been prevented. But, knowing this man so far, I would say that he probably only cares about saving men, because every man lost is another soldier that potentially can be useful to his country. Therefore, if they are dead, Sergei can't utilize them to assist in achieving his goals and completing his objectives. However, this notion must be at least partially relevant, as Sergei's primary concern is undoubtedly the completion of his mission. Also, Sergei appears to exhibit a superiority complex, which is evident in his ability to speak, but his choice to remain silent. He seems to favor silence, deeming it not worth his time to engage with opponents. He only occasionally comments on insignificancy of subjects and personal matters with opponents, even sometimes mocking his rival, Raven. However, I have doubts that this behavior was present in Sergei before his military service. Rather, he seems to have developed it over years of witnessing inexperienced officers undermining his military efforts. His field experience has contributed to this, making Sergei not only a capable soldier, but also an effective commander. After what he perceives as years of inaction from both his superiors and the Russian government, Sergei has gained insights into the inner workings of his country. He has come to the conclusion that in order to protect his motherland from external and internal threats, drastic and harsh measures must be taken. He's a man of action who doesn't waste words and focuses on doing what needs to be done. The man who is willing to do whatever it takes to ensure the safety of his motherland and the success of his mission. Now, these traits aren't necessarily bad, especially during times of Tekken 6 and 7, where World War III begin. The world as they knew is literally collapsing due to the actions of two men. However, these somewhat noble ideas are undermined by his complete disregard for human life and suffering, as well as his disgust, cruelty, and vindictive, despised nature, which Sergei exhibits often enough. Sergei lacks any sympathy for his enemies, whether they are civilians or soldiers. This attitude is not unique to Sergei, as many of his fellow infantrymen seem to share the same perspectives. These views are understandable, particularly during times of war, when hunger, despair, and death drive people to blame anyone and anything on the opposing side. These sentiments are important to an extent, as for a great many individuals, there are only so many friends and allies you can see murdered before your heart hardens against anyone and everyone. This is highlighted when, after a failed attempt to apprehend Devil Jin in Tekken 5, Sergei returned to his country to quell an ongoing civil war organized by covert Mishima Zaibatsu operatives. His men combed through a village that had instigated and help the revolt, searching for any signs of Tekken Force soldiers. Emotions are undeniably intense, following the recent loss of their comrades upon failed mission, particularly when they've come across the gruesome sight of their fellow unit soldiers hanged in a barbaric and brutal fashion. With the assistance of Tekken Force soldiers by the villagers, what do you think is fueling this ongoing violence? Those feelings were building up in all of these men at that moment, and again. These emotions are completely understandable. What's inexcusable is acting on these feelings of hatred and murdering innocents in a fit of rage. Feelings are feelings, but actions are another thing altogether. The author says it best when he describes Sergei as the eye of the storm in winter, a silent rage that boiled through the village, the villagers, and the elite special forces soldier who perhaps, after witnessing Sergei Dragunov's vigilante execution, called him the White Angel of Death. His cold and stoic demeanor, coupled with the rage that he damned the village. And when we watch Sergei Dragunov shoot a woman in cold blood simply for being concerned about what these men have done to her village, it's heinous, to say the least. Subsequently holding a gun to her daughter's head in attempts to coerce information from her husband about Tekken Force is just adding another layer to an already despicable act of murder. Sometimes an act of evil is in service to the greater good. Here, though, we see a man who's taking swift action based on tertiary intelligence that he hasn't had time to confirm. Yes, they have Tekken Force weapons and an overabundance of their comrades' weapons and food supplies. But if a civil war is ravaging your country, I think anyone would take measures to defend themselves and provide provisions for their community. It's true they could have been genuinely forced to help Tekken Force, as Sergei suspected, but once again, he had no way of confirming this information. When it comes down to it, this act is nothing more than a hasty attempt at intimidation and coercion. It's an event that transforms Sergei in our eyes from a callous, collective, and cynical man to a ruthless, cruel, and cold-blooded reaper. It's in this scene as well where we get to see the intensification of his already hostile relationship with his soldiers. This highlights a facet of Sergei that I mentioned earlier, which is already prevalent in his treatment of the villagers, his vindictive nature. Now, I don't believe his quest for revenge against Raven, after discovering Raven's connection to the Civil War and his organization's role in this event, is solely rooted in the fact that Raven injured Sergei, as Raven himself bears a scar between his two eyes from an unknown confrontation with Sergei too. It's not that he personally has issues with Raven, but as Raven mentions during a conversation with Victor, Sergei believes in what he's doing. Sergei isn't so much looking to get back at Raven or the United Organization as he's looking to eliminate what he perceives as parasites that are bringing down his motherland and his missions for the benefit of his country. Raven even acknowledges this during his confrontation with Sergei's elite special group. In their hangout, in his speech, he mentions that he doesn't have an issue with a man who simply follows orders. However, in Sergei's perspective, Raven deviated from those orders because he went against what Sergei personally envisioned as the right path to follow. Certainly, self-preservation played a role in Sergei's attempt to kill Raven, as Raven intended to reveal the truth about Sergei's actions about the massacre of village, potentially leading to Sergei facing a court-martial by his own country. Regardless of this situation, it's likely that Dragunov would have eventually tried to eliminate Raven, whether or not these circumstances had occurred. Certainly, he may have believed that Raven's way of operating wouldn't endure in the long run. Considering his unconventional approach, as I previously mentioned, Sergei has likely witnessed some of the most terrible actions humanity is capable of, and as a result, he has become emotionally detached. The reasons behind his emotional state become apparent in the same interaction I previously described. In his really brief speech, Sergei criticized his men and Raven, claiming they have no real comprehension of death or killing. contrasting this with Raven, whom he sees as an idealistic crusader out of touch with the harsh realities of the world. Sergei thinks that his own experiences have given him a superior understanding of what it means to take a life or be in danger. He views those who think otherwise as naive, even despises individuals who aim to enlighten society with compassion and mercy when, in his view, they should be unflinchingly brutal and unforgiving. From Sergei's perspective, these men have little understanding of true hardship and pain. What do they truly understand about the pain of losing loved ones, about taking another person's life in order to survive and prevail? Beneath Sergei's tough exterior lies a man whose missions and enduring hardships of horrors, battling against overwhelming odds, both externally and internally, have burdened his soul to the point where they've extinguished any trace of the goodwill and compassion he might have once possessed. Even though these men might share similar experiences and suffer just as he does, Sergei has grown so disheartened with the common people and their flawed attempts to defend their loved ones that he's unable to look beyond his own suffering, to acknowledge the pain that those around him also endure. This is what has profoundly affected Sergei, turning him into a person whose mindset revolves solely around the concept of sacrificing everything for the sake of motherland, himself, and the choice between us or them, with nothing in between. The irony of Sergei Dragunov, despite his disdain for individuals who use distractions to avoid facing reality, becomes even more apparent when he himself is trapped in an unending mission, unable to break free from it. This highlights Sergei's complete lack of understanding of his own true nature. He's so deeply entrenched in his own suffering and perspective on the world that he can't spare a thought for anything else around him. He's entirely consumed by the concepts of death and victory, willing to achieve them at any cost. He's a man who no longer harbors fear, one who enters battle without concern for his own well-being. Much of Sergei Dragunov's humanity has been overshadowed by an unwavering focus on results and warfare. It's no surprise, then, that in Tekken 8, we encounter Sergei in a state of rapid aging, with one's gaze fixed upon his dreadful, empty eyes, has the power to unsettle even the most courageous souls. It becomes painfully evident that whatever remnants of Sergei Dragunov's innocence from his childhood, youth, or dedicated days as a loyal soldier for his motherland have been utterly eclipsed by the harrowing ordeals he endured as an elite among the elite, serving his homeland. He has evolved from a person into a hollow and broken individual, completely sealed off from emotions. It's only appropriate that he should bear the repercussions of his deeds. So, who was Sergei Dragunov? He was a man who grew disillusioned and cynical after enduring years of conflict, death, and suffering. In rare moments of leisure, he found solace in the simple act of singing, but the horrors of what he'd seen had permanently disrupted his moral compass, humanity, and general perspective on life. His experiences led him to believe that he alone had grasped the truth, understanding the inner workings of pain and death like no one else. This conviction caused him to develop a mindset that distanced himself from anything he considered weak or soft, despising such qualities and the forces he saw as obstructing his delusional mission to protect his motherland by any means necessary. While he possessed charisma, the mindset of a warrior, strength, and experience, the pain he had endured overshadowed these traits, leaving us with a man who was vindictive, merciless, ruthless, and cold-blooded killer, an example of how far humans can be pushed when pushed to the limits. Sergei Dragunov undoubtedly committed acts of cruelty in the pursuit of his twisted notion of vigilance and victory. However, we mustn't forget the greater evils that shaped him into the person we see in this franchise. The evils of war, violence, suffering, and death, all of which have the potential to lead anyone, regardless of their background or beliefs, to resort to the very evil they despise. Sergei Dragunov stands as a haunting testament to this, showcasing the limits of human resilience and the atrocities of war, and humanity's darkest actions, which can pierce one's soul, entombing them under a frozen avalanche of hopelessness and despair, shaping them into an unrelenting harbinger of death, or, as one might prefer, a grim reaper.